And welcome back, everybody, to episode 171 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room, with three different. Someday I'll get that right on the first try. With over 300 beers to choose from at all their locations, live music, entertainment, and trivia at all locations, and of course, just great vibes. Whether you're there for a Sabres game, Bills game, or just for happy hour, make sure you check out Fatty Beer, become a Mug Club member, and tell them Two Goalies One Mic sent you. And of course, Buffalo Logo apparel. Whether you're getting a shirt, your hat, your hoodie, any type of Bills merchandise, especially the Bills, and of course some Sabre stuff on there too. Make sure you go check them out. BuffaloLogo.com, at BuffaloLogoCo on Instagram and Twitter, at Fatty Beer on Instagram and Twitter. Episode 171, Hurls. You followed the Sabres around in Cali. I think you caught 2 out of the 3 games. Big undefeated, 3-0. How was the trip? How were the games? Looks like you had a great time.
Yeah, Friday especially. I think I'm still recovering from Friday night, to be honest. I had a hockey game so this was after the Kings game on Wednesday, which a Wednesday night in downtown LA, for anybody not too familiar with the geography of LA, it's not the easiest place to get to. Had to take a light rail downtown after work at 4 p.m., which is uncommon just generally to take public transportation in LA, to a 7:30 puck drop, which was a great game. Obviously, the UPL shutout. It was really entertaining. A lot of chances on both sides of the ice. Obviously, Jason Zucker gets the power play goal, and they come out with that win. Great. Get home maybe at midnight on Wednesday. Go to work the next day at 6 a.m. on Thursday. I have a hockey game at 11 p.m. on Thursday night, 11 p.m. Pacific time. Win that game 9-4. Really happy with that. Go to work the next day on 2 hours of sleep, work for 10 hours. I had already committed to going to the game in Anaheim. Me and my buddy drive down to Anaheim, which is in rush hour traffic from the west side of LA, an hour and a half in standstill traffic. But we're going to see the team play, obviously coming off a win, which was great. Had these great seats in the 200 level of Honda Center, which is one of the worst venues in pro sports, in my opinion. But the atmosphere was amazing because I would say half the building was empty. And of the people that were there, I would say maybe 35 to 45% were Sabres fans. And it was a Friday night game. So obviously it was pretty cool. And to come back from a 2-0 deficit, especially in the fashion that the team did at the end of the second period, I think everybody in the sport of hockey knows that if you give up 2 goals at the end of a period, in terms of momentum and momentum swings, it's absolutely backbreaking. So to go into the second intermission, Sabres fans in the hallway of the Honda Center, screaming at the 6 Ducks fans that were there. They were getting really upset with us. To hold it scoreless in the third, and obviously to see Yuri Kulik finish it off in overtime. Was one of the cooler in-person Sabres experiences that I've ever had. So all in all, obviously a great trip. Unfortunately, I couldn't find my way to San Jose. I don't think I would have made it back, to be honest, had I witnessed another in-person Sabres comeback. So I am thankful I didn't do that, but at the same time, also a really good win on Saturday night against a pretty scrappy young Sharks team as well. So obviously,
had you gone to that third game,
for me personally,
had you been at that third game too, I think you would have had to come to Buffalo because
exactly.
The goalie conspiracy theorists and all of us said that you would have had to be at games until
and even related to that, James Reimer, what a performance Saturday in against a team that he had just played on last season, in a role where he had just got picked up off waivers coming over from the Ducks, who he was previously on after being on the Sabres earlier in the season, to making one of the coolest glove saves I've seen in a long time against the Sharks in the second period. Unbelievable performance from him to keep the Sabres in the game, to even get them in a position to come back and win that game on Saturday night. So all in all, just an amazing 3-game stretch.
In the post game too, it was like I said that save was kind of like, you know how Vasilevsky, he'll throw his hand behind his back and make. I think he's done it twice. That reminded me of that. It's like just the quick thinking, just no, you know what I mean? I mean, it's all reactive, right? It's instinct.
For sure.
Like,
I mean, there's a little bit of luck involved, but the way in which he did it was he knew where it was, obviously. So it seems as though he had done that before. But one of the best glove saves I've seen in a long time.
Like, obviously, you've been to games in these arenas before. Like, did you guys get able to get to go out afterwards or get to have a good time?
That's the tough part. Like, not on Wednesday, really, because the game ended at like 10:15 p.m. Pacific time, and I work at 6 a.m. the next day.
Yeah.
And then Friday night in Anaheim, like, what are you going to do in Anaheim? We went to a like this local chain restaurant afterwards and had a beer, and then had to drive back to LA. So
yeah, right.
Unfortunately, not the best situation to completely celebrate each win, but I would say that the atmosphere, both at Crypto.com Arena Wednesday night, there's always a lot of Sabres fans for Sabres Kings game, just because there are a good amount. We have a really, really good community that get together and watch Bills games in Santa Monica at this place called Busby's. Shout out the LA Bills backers of Santa Monica. We got a big tailgate coming up in a week and a half here against the Rams. So we've got a big community out here that watches Bills games together. So a lot of those people were at Crypto.com to watch the game. And then I was shocked how many Sabres fans there were in Anaheim. It's a Friday night, so I think that favored that situation a little bit. But there were so many, and it was a relatively empty arena because obviously the Ducks are rebuilding at the moment.
Well, but here's the thing: like, didn't the Ducks win a 4 out of 5 or something like that?
Yeah.
I thought maybe on a Friday night, be a few more bodies in the stands, but yeah,
I was really, even right before Thanksgiving, I was really surprised. So
did you guys move? Did you guys move down, obviously, from wherever you're sitting?
No, Friday night or some of the best seats I've ever had to watch an NHL game. Had a buddy who had a connection. They only have 200, 300, and 400 level at the Honda Center. So technically we were in the 300, but it was effectively, think of the 200 level at a Sabres game, center ice, second or third row, nobody in front of us, just able to follow the game as well as you possibly could have. And I think we are in the end that the Sabres scored twice in, which turned out to be the goal they didn't score on the entire game. But it was one of the better views and experiences I've had at a game before. People come to your seats. We had $50 in free drinks and food, as people probably saw in my reaction to video to Yuri Kulik scoring the overtime goal. I had a little bit left, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I just poured the rest all over myself, which felt right in the moment, given the situation.
You made the right move.
It was a really, really cool experience. And I wasn't sure whether we should go down or not, just because of the traffic and it's Ducks. I really don't necessarily love the arena that much, but it turned out
who's got a worse arena, them or us?
I honestly I like the sight lines and the acoustics and the atmosphere of Key Arena, even in its like decrepit state, better than the Honda Center. Like, it really just feels like a convention center, and there's no character whatsoever involved. And even like the in-game entertainment, they tried to put a DJ in there to like pump people up during the game, but it wasn't even good in that sense whatsoever. So I honestly would say Buffalo, but I am a little bit biased.
Okay, well, just glad you had a great time. Got two dubs and a 3-0 road trip. And let's get right into that. You 2 out of those 3 games you're expected to win, right? Like, you're expected to beat the Ducks, you're expected to beat the San Jose Sharks. To squeak out a win there against a decent, I'm not going to say they're really good, but decent LA team, 1-0, to start that road trip off and get that momentum, and then go into Anaheim, get a pretty convinced. What was the final of that game?
3-2 in overtime.
3-2, yeah, that's right. Kulik with the overtime goal, and to finish off the Sharks the way you did. I'm gonna say impressive, but my thing of it is these are the games that you needed to win, because they help make up for those games, especially the ones coming up where maybe you are the underdog and you might lose. So these are the points you can't sacrifice on a West Coast trip, that are going to matter so much come, the final like month or two of the season.
Yeah, especially Wednesday. I would say against the Kings. The Kings play a really, really tight defensive game. They don't really give you much. I
Yeah.
would say the Sabres were the better team in the first period. And then after that, UPL largely stole them the game. He was unbelievable Wednesday night in terms of high danger chances, covering rebounds directly in front of the net. Kopitar was waiting on the doorstep 2 or 3 times in the second and third period, just waiting to pounce on anything. And he sealed the ice and was, as everybody saw, like he was at his best, coming off an injury where he hadn't played in a week and a half. So that was really impressive. Obviously, he needs to be good for them to do anything this season, and he was largely the reason they won on Wednesday. And even on Friday and Saturday, I would say that they, as everyone saw, with each win being a comeback, they started off relatively slow. Mm-hmm. And that's the sign of a team that doesn't get down on itself like teams that we saw in the past, especially last season with all of the slow starts. So there's some maturity there. Obviously, I think Lindy and the new coaching staff has gotten through to them in terms of, hey, like you might have a slow start, especially coming off of a back-to-back with relatively short amount of rest. That game ended at, like, I'd say 10 o'clock, 10:15 Pacific Coast time on Friday night. I'm not sure how much time they had in the locker room afterwards, but I imagine they had an 11:35 flight out of John Wayne in Orange County to get up to San Jose. They probably got in maybe at 12:31, and it was a 5 p.m. game on Saturday, West Coast time. So maybe they got 6-7 hours of sleep, had a morning skate, probably a pregame nap.
I bet you the morning skate was probably optional.
Exactly. That is not an easy situation for your team to be in, especially against a young upstart San Jose Sharks team with a lot of young talent, as we saw with Macklin Celebrini. He made some unbelievable plays on Saturday night to put the Sharks in
2 goals yesterday.
What's that?
See his 2 goals yesterday.
Yeah, and there were some plays from
kid's going to be an absolute.
He's amazing.
Yeah, like he's got such an incredible shot.
There's this like no look touch pass out of the air that he eventually got to another player and then set up a chance on Saturday that Reimer was good on. But it speaks to a larger point that I would say that there's frustration from the fan base when the team starts slow, because I think there's some trauma from the past 2 years of the Sabres starting slow. But this team has shown that it is a little bit different, that even with a slow start, even with a bad first and second period, they're not out of it. And they've shown the ability to come back in games and prove that they're not this team that's just going to lie down. So I think that speaks to the leadership, and I think it speaks to the maturity in the locker room. Guys like Darlene and Tuck really getting through to these young guys and showing them that, hey, just because you're down 2-0 in a game doesn't mean that the game's over.
No, I agreed. Obviously, we were without Tage for that entire trip, which I don't think really anybody expected to start. I mean, when we talked last on episode 170, like we were fully expecting him to at least play in one of those 3 games, and then just so happens he misses, games 3, 4, and 5. Initially, when it was reported, it wasn't a serious injury. They're just, taking some caution. But I felt, and I said this too. I was actually on another podcast last night. Shout out Chris Maz and my buddy Shawnee Vaccaro, Sean Vaccaro from high school. It's called the Step Brothers Buffalo Sabres podcast. I want to say that I think that's what it's called. Shout out to them. We talked last night about it. Feel I'm not gonna take it for granted that road trip that we were able to escape with 6 points there, without Tage, because the result might not have been the same had you were on a road trip in 3 different cities, like maybe the schedule we have coming up. So Tage coming back, as it was reported today, against the Wild for tomorrow night. That's huge. I'm glad they took caution. I mean, stars aligned, planets aligned, whatever, that this happened in a very soft part of their schedule. But good to have him back, but don't take it for granted, Kevin Adams. Like, that happens again and it's a longer injury, could really, really hurt this team in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the most important player on the team, not named Rasmus Dahlin and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. And they absolutely need him to continue his point production moving forward. I would say that the guys that you expected to step up did step up. Alex Tuck has been ho-hum, one of the best, even from a fantasy perspective. I think he's the 15th in different formats, obviously, but I have him on one team, and he's the 15th ranked player in all of fantasy hockey. And that speaks to not only his point production, but what he's doing from blocking shots, plus minus. Like, obviously, plus minus isn't the best indicator, but he has a really, really good rating at the moment. Ryan McLeod continues to be good in both ends of the ice. Jason Zucker, obviously 2 huge goals on Wednesday and Friday night. Zach Benson, Yuri Kulik, young guys that are making impacts in both the offensive and defensive zone. Even Yuri Kulik being a capable NHL center. I don't think anybody expected that. I think everybody just wanted point production and what we knew he could be, which is a guy that can score goals. Of course, he gets a massive goal on Friday night, but he won a lot of faceoffs during this road trip. And I think he's a guy that if he could play center moving forward and let Dylan Cousins find his game on the wing and allow him to get back to the player that he was, I think that could only mean good things for this team moving forward. So
I do want to point that out too. And Kulik was drafted as a center. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't drafted as a winger. He was drafted as a center. The Sabres put him on the wing in Rochester. And it worked out for the most part, but he has looked solid down the middle in Buffalo. I don't see any reason indicative from his play that you don't put him back at center when he's in this lineup. And I think one of the biggest things, positive things of that, outside of obviously him scoring that goal, was the play of Jack Quinn. I thought Jack Quinn had his best 2 games of the season,
especially on Friday. Like
yeah.
Like in the view that we had, like me and my buddy, it was noticeable how much he looked like himself.
Yes.
I think we tweeted out one play specifically where he used his hands and he used his patience and he used his presence in the slot to create a chance for himself. It didn't go in, but it looked way more like the Jack Quinn that we're all used to. So I think that's a really good sign moving forward. And I think with him, it's just time, right? Like, we've talked about his injuries. We've talked about everything that he went through last season. Getting him to a position where he's confident and comfortable in the role that he has on this team, the goals are going to come. His shot just didn't go away. Like, he's going to get himself into better positions, and he's going to be faster and more confident with the puck than he has been early in the season. So I'm not too worried about him. I think Cousins has already started to get his game back. But, Kulik being as solid as he's looked so far, like, I don't imagine there's a situation where, obviously, who knows what's going to happen with Jordan Greenway, but I don't think there's any way you can send Yuri Kulik down after what we just saw from him in the past 3 games.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm not worried about Jack Quinn. I mean, he still has 1 goal in, 19, 20 games this season. Still something that I think we expected him to struggle, probably not this much, definitely not this much. But I will say that, you until proven otherwise, until things just don't look good, you do not take Yuri Kulik out of the lineup. You keep him right where he is, and hopefully this really does get Jack Quinn going, because that's a guy that if you can get him going, get him start to get him scoring, that's just going to help. That's just going to obviously help this team. It's going to help Dylan Cousins. It's going to help your secondary scoring. It's going to take pressure off your top line to always have to be produced night in and night out. I mean, they're probably going to, but on those nights where they're not, and they're not, finding the back of the net, or not, generating chances, to have that as your second line and have that, have those guys stepping up is just going to be huge.
For sure. And in terms of Tage, I'm glad that they sat him. I think that an injury, it seems like it was a groin from everything that's been reported. An injury like that, as a goalie specifically, I don't know. I've never been a player since I was 6 years old, but as a goalie specifically, you know how nagging and how easy it is to re-aggravate a groin injury, no matter how small of a strain or a pull it is. So for them to give it, is it almost week? It'll be a week and a half or 2 weeks now that he's been able to rest it after re-aggravating it on what looked to be a very inconsequential play in the second period against the Canadiens, to give him as much time as he had now to rest that injury and hopefully give it no chance of re-aggravating, I think is the best possible thing moving forward. Because we saw last season, he played most of the year hurt with that wrist injury, and then he also had the back injury in the season before that. So he's had a history of playing through nagging injuries. I think they were just trying to be as smart as they possibly could, especially going into a very, very good team against the Wild tomorrow night. I knew about Kirill Kaprizov, Kirill the Thrill, as they call him in the streets. I knew how good he was, and I knew how good of a season he's been having. But I had no idea that the Wild were 13-4-4 this season in a very tough Western Conference. So that's not going to be an easy game, no matter what way you want to slice it. I tweeted out earlier today that obviously the game of the year, aside from the home opener for any Sabres fan, I think is the Thanksgiving Eve game. Obviously, a lot of people are home. It's usually a packed house, no matter how bad the team is. People are going out after the game. Everybody's in town. Everybody's excited. But coming off a 3-0 California swing, Tage is coming back. Lindy's obviously back. The team is playing well. Like, especially if the game goes the way that they want it to tomorrow night, that has the ability to feel like a playoff atmosphere. It really, really does, as much as it's felt like one in that building in a really long time. And that's something in more ways than one that this fan base, that this franchise, that this team just absolutely desperately needs.
Yes.
That's something that hasn't happened or has only happened on RJ night, on Ryan Miller night, on Kyle Okposo's 1000th game, on special nights that have just happened out of pure accomplishment, not because the team has necessarily been good. Maybe towards the end of the 22-23 season when they went on that run a little bit, and maybe Devin Levi's first start against the Rangers where they won in overtime. But to have a regular season game at the end of November, above 500, they're not in third place in the Atlantic anymore, is such an amazing opportunity, especially against a really good team like the Wild. So I'm obviously really looking forward to that.
And the biggest difference between this team is just like the way they close out games. They don't quit on themselves when they do get into a hole. And I've used this word multiple times, gutsy. They're just a gutsy, hardworking team. I'm going to say reminiscent of, the very last Ted Nolan team before Lindy took over the 96-97 Sabres, where they called them the hardest working team in hockey.
People have given Kevin Adams a lot of crap, and for some reasons that's been justified. But if you look at his two offseason additions, Ryan McLeod and Jason Zucker, they look pretty good.
They have been good so far. Yes,
they look really good, and they look savvy. They look like they were rooted in numbers. They were rooted in traits that this team needed. Obviously, being responsible in your own zone and being good in front of the net, getting gritty goals. Look how many goals in front of the net Jason Zucker has gotten so far this season. Goals that the team basically had none of all last season. I think the only guy you really got those from was Jordan Greenway. So, and you can see it too with his energy. There was a video from after the Sharks game. There was a content creator that was also following the team like me. I think he's Winsanity on Twitter. I recently followed him, and he did a great job of putting content out there as well. But after the game against the Sharks, apparently Sharks fans were talking shit to the Sabres bench the entire game, and they were yelling at him. They were sitting right behind the bench.
And so as
that empty net goal went in, he turned around and he banged his stick on the glass.
I saw the video.
He was just yelling at the Sharks fans. How could you not love that? How could you not want that on your team? A veteran who has been through a lot in this league. He was a really, really good player on a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. The guy knows how to win. He knows how to be a pro. And, of course, it seemed like a bit of an overpay, but he's been worth every penny at this current moment. And
I think the biggest tests right now is these next stretch of games, right? Like,
of course,
always will where this team. I think this is really the indicator where this team is going to be.
For sure,
these games, especially starting tomorrow against Minnesota, because you are playing a bunch of teams that are expected to be in the playoffs. Lindy said it today during his presser that this is going to be the true test for a true test for this team. How durable they are, how resilient they are, how gutsy they are. And make no mistake about it, man. You cannot start with an opportunity here to go 4-0 for the first time since probably 2022, 2023. This is not the time to do what you kind of have been doing this season after winning 3 in a row, is losing 2 in a row or going
And
1-3. Like
yeah,
you can't have that happen after such a big, and I imagine, room building road trip. Like I said, I hope after that win in San Jose, those guys let loose in the city and just had a blast. I really do. Like
honestly,
I hope it was
how
like old 2006 or 2005, 2006, 2005 to 2007 Chippewa vibes for that
I
team.
will say they probably didn't go out in Buffalo, but given that they probably flew back on Saturday night, but that plane flight back on Saturday night was probably one of the better flights that this team has had in a long time.
What was it was a 5 p.m. game, that final game.
Yeah, so they probably got out. They probably had a 9 p.m. flight back to Buffalo, maybe 10.
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
I mean, you have this much
red-eye
time
probably.
off. Like,
Yeah.
is there really a rush for them to get to leave right after? I don't know.
I don't know if they would have stayed overnight in San Jose. Regardless, it doesn't matter. I would say that the vibes related to the team are as good as especially in the room, they're as good as they've been in a really long time. And even with a goalie that started the season off with the team and James Reimer, got put on waivers, went to the Ducks, got picked up off waivers from the Ducks, got back in the swing of things on this West Coast road trip, and then gives you a performance like he did on Saturday night. You can say whatever you want about James Reimer personally. I think a lot of people have different opinions on a lot of players personally on this team. But just purely from a hockey perspective, he gave you exactly what you needed in a backup goalie. And I think I mentioned it last week. His underlying numbers from when he was with the Ducks, they didn't look great, but he had a lot of goals saved above expected. He was putting himself in good situations given the quality of shots that he had. And you saw that on Saturday. He made a lot of really, really good saves in tough situations. And if you can get that every week and a half, 2 weeks from him, well, as we saw, Devin Levi in his first start with the Americans put up an absolutely incredible performance in a 2-1 win on Wednesday night, the same night the Sabres played against the Kings. Give him time to develop to the point where maybe later in the season he can come back and give you a higher ceiling than James Reimer can consistently. So we'll see what happens with that. But currently, as it stands, I haven't been as confident as I've been in the Sabres goaltending situation as I have been in a while, provided that UPL continues this level of consistency that we've seen from them.
Yeah, going back to your point before about, whether it is or isn't justified for Kevin Adams to to receive, and everyone knows how I feel. I still feel that way. I still feel like not enough was done. And I think these next stretch of games will, be indicative of whether he did do enough or not, even though I still think just because you have a winning record right now at the end of November going into Thanksgiving doesn't mean that you can't be a better hockey team. It doesn't mean that you can't add. And going into our next point, Frank Saravelli on his show today kind of had a little bit of news. I would say noteworthy. This has been going on now for over a year with David Jiricek. Jiricek has not been happy with his positioning within the organization, his development, so to speak. And he has essentially been talked about in the trade circles for quite some time now. Kind of like Trevor Zegras out of Anaheim. Like, he's been in trade circles for a while now in the rumor mill. But are we on David Jiricek watch? Because he did specifically say, do not count out San Jose or the Buffalo Sabres when it comes to David Jiricek. He did mention the first teams he mentioned were, I think, Philly and Pittsburgh. There might have been another team in there specifically. I think there were 3 teams maybe. And then he went on to say that do not count out Buffalo and San Jose, which tells me that a guy like Saravelli, who I'm sure is obviously connected, that he has heard that there might have been conversations with Buffalo. And why not? I mean, they have the pieces to make a deal like that. And I like Jiricek a lot. He turns 21 on Thursday, or is that, Thursday, on Thanksgiving. I think that, and he's a right-handed shot defenseman. I mean, right immediately, I think that you find a guy that I wouldn't say immediately, but that you could toss into the top 4 defenseman conversation and finally maybe find a guy that can play with Owen Power.
Yeah, I was just looking just generally at his numbers. 59 points in 86 career AHL games as a 20-year-old,
Yes.
as a 6'3" defenseman. That's pretty good. And then in the NHL, 11 points in 53 games. So he has a good amount of experience in really good leagues at 20 years old. 6'3", as you said, right-handed shot defenseman. Not necessarily something that happens every day of the week. I think that exact prototype is coveted by every team in the league. There was a reason he was drafted as high as he was. It was the top 10, I think. So to get a guy like that, you're going to have to give up a lot, I would say. And the Blue Jackets aren't necessarily in a position where they have a lot of leverage, but at the same time, given the unfortunate circumstances of everything surrounding that organization, they are rebuilding as much as any team could possibly be rebuilding. And if it's a guy that's currently in the AHL that's not even contributing to the NHL is a very, very high prospect. Obviously, he's really young. Maybe they do want to change a pace. They do want to bring something in that they currently don't have. And if any team is willing to give them that, it would be the Sabres. Whether it's a top prospect like Rosian or a first round, I don't know if he's worthy of a first round pick at this point. Maybe he would be, given his ceiling and also given how high of a pick he was. It's something that you at least have to have a conversation about. And I think we have to trust that Kevin Adams is having those conversations. It wouldn't be as rumored as it is if he wasn't, right?
Yeah. Would you trade? I mean, I'm first name that pops into my head, Ryan Johnson. Yeah, Ryan Johnson, the same age. He's a left-handed defenseman. Juracek's a right-handed defenseman. That is the first name I think of in the pick. Like, I think that would get it done because they're both former first-round picks. Obviously, Ryan Johnson taken at the end of the first. Yeah. Juracek's a former 6th overall pick in 2022. But I would say hopefully it comes to mind first.
Hopefully a pick swap in that case, because I think given what we saw from Ryan Johnson in the NHL last season, his ceiling is also pretty high. Obviously, his role is a bit clouded by the fact that I think I want to get into this a little bit more, that the Sabres down the left side of their blue line
a couple times
are as stacked as anybody at this point. Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. I think the Blue Jackets are the type of team that would be interested in any top prospect, to be honest. They maybe a Noah Ostlund, maybe a Rosian, maybe even a guy like Nikita Novikov, who maybe is a little bit farther away from contributing at the NHL level than Juracek is at the moment. But he's also a big right-handed shot defense. I think he's a right-handed shot. I'm not.
Yeah, I checked. He's a right-handed shot.
Yeah, so maybe a guy like that. They just want a different type of guy with traits, with a little bit of a ceiling himself, to come in and just get a change of pace. And that might take a little bit more, obviously, because he's not as highly touted of a prospect. But yeah, I mean, I'm down for it. I think everybody would be at this point. Okay. Probably can't hurt. I don't even know if you do trade for him that he immediately slots into your NHL lineup. But let's say you bring him over and he plays well with the Americans, maybe bring him up and see how he does. So yeah, a guy with a ceiling like that in the pedigree that he has, I think you can't say no to it.
A couple points here too from Corbin Snyder, and then obviously our boy here, Mauricio. We'll get into the Trouba and Kreider thing in a minute, but yeah, I agree with you on Juracek. I was interested in Juracek last season. I was like, you desperately need another guy in the right hand. They've needed a guy in the right hand side for 2 years now, and they still haven't been able to figure that out. And a guy as young as he is, with as much promise that he has, it just makes sense. It just makes sense. Like that should be a conversation that you would hope Kevin Adams has had, and that he's continuously following up on, and is saying, before you make a deal with anybody, please call me. That's what I am hoping from Kevin Adams. Like that is the conversation I hope he's having, and that if he's not hearing from, was it Don Waddell? Is that the?
But
I don't know.
That sounds right.
I think Don Waddell is the GM. I want to say that if he's not hearing from Don, that he's following up with him on a daily basis. And if you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job, Kevin, because that's a guy that I think fills a big hole on your team right now. And maybe finally we can end this. Obviously, like game of musical chairs of who's playing with who on your blue line, and have some consistency there. And I make no mistake about it. Like, yeah, he's got a decent amount of points for a 20-year-old defenseman, but he's a pretty good stay-at-home guy. He's 6'4". He'll play an honest game defensively, which is why I'm so like surprised that a team that's like Columbus that start out the season playing well, like why would they be shopping him? Like I don't understand. Is it more of just the player doesn't want to be there anymore? He's not happy with his place in the organization? Is it a development thing? Like I personally don't understand it.
Yeah, me neither. But at the same time, as I kind of mentioned, given where they are as an organization and everything that they've been through, I think a change of pace, guys that want to be there, just establishing a culture, right? Like they've been bad for a long time and they want to, I don't necessarily need to talk about the Blue Jackets a lot. I think it's just more so that the guy's not happy. If you can find something, get something for a high pedigree and a high value and a high ceiling. I think any smart GM would have that conversation. So yeah, I think we got to give Adams a little bit of credit that he's had these conversations. He did it with Bowen Byram and Casey Middlestat. He did it with Matt Savoy and Ryan McLeod. And those two guys are those were NHL hockey trades that are currently contributing to this group being above 500. So hopefully he is, and I guess we'll have to see if it actually happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is what it is, though. The just the unhappiness of the player. And then we're gonna go right into this too. Following up on that, some more rumors that came out. Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider allegedly on the trading block. We've talked this in our group chats. I've always liked Chris Kreider. I liked Chris Kreider back before he signed. Was he traded to the Rangers and then signed, then re-signed, or was he?
I think he was traded. Yeah,
traded. Yeah, he's such a good 200-foot player. Kind of gives you like a little bit of Chris Drury vibe. Always in the right place, right time. He has some skill, but he's not afraid to go to the net, play that gritty style hockey.
And the first thing you think of when you think of Chris Kreider is speed. He's one of the fastest players in the league, and he has been for a really long time. I would, for people that aren't too familiar, I would describe him as a faster, more skilled Jordan Greenway. Honestly, that's what I see out of Chris Kreider. He's a power forward, and at 33 years old, obviously a little bit on the older side, but it's a guy that also has pedigree in the NHL. He had 75 points last season on a really good Rangers team, and he's played on playoff winning hockey teams for the past 10 years. How could you not want a guy like that on your team? It brings leadership, it brings skill, it brings toughness, it brings, I would say, not a culture shock, but another guy like Jason Zucker that knows how to win and would be good for the room no matter where he goes. So, and Jacob Trouba, I think, is a different conversation. Let's say it's a package deal. Yeah, you're going to bring over Jacob Trouba. He's the current captain of the New York Rangers, right? Like he's another right shot defenseman. He's physical. He's a little bit more stay at home. I don't necessarily think he's playing his best hockey. Like he's not the greatest defenseman in the world, but he would probably slot in somewhere on your third pair and give you another guy that you could rely on. So if it comes down to that, see what they're asking. I wouldn't give up too much given the fact they're both on the older side. But in terms of helping this team right now, I think they both absolutely would.
Yeah. What handed shot is Trouba?
I think he's right.
fills a hole.
Yeah, and I would say he's an older, seasoned Connor Clifton, right? I think everybody knows Jacob Trouba for these bone-crushing hits. He lays on what seems like a nightly basis. Hits that I've looked at before, and I've been like, that is dangerous. That he hasn't been fined for. That I think he's been suspended once or twice, but he's not afraid to throw his body around. And I think Clifton has shown that he's not afraid to do that either. But a guy just like Kreider, he's been in the league for a long time. He's played on a lot of really good winning teams, and it's no understatement to be named captain of the New York Rangers. Like, that's a big deal by that coaching staff, to have the trust of Chris Drury, who, as a former captain of the Sabres, knows what it means, what
Michael
it takes to
Peck is
win.
on that bench too, a former captain of the Sabres.
Exactly, to lead that group. That is not anything to slouch at. Of course, it's just a title, but to be named captain of the New York Rangers, especially that group, with Artemi Panarin on the team, Mika Zibanejad, Adam Fox, even Igor Shesterkin, every single guy on that team to be named captain means a lot. So if they're shopping him, obviously they want to shake up their team a little bit to provide a little bit of a spark, but it's not something I would say no to if the price was right.
Well, they addressed it on Saravelli's show right after they talked about the Yurchek stuff, and Saravelli seems to think it's more smoke than anything. Like, I forget who his co-host is, but he mentioned, like, are they just like kind of tossing a grenade in the room just to kind of spark the guys up a bit, trying to get them on their toes with a rumor that which could be very well be the truth. It's like, let's get these guys' attention. I mean, they think they're, what are they, 12-7? I think they have a winning record. They're not necessarily in a bad spot, but I think they coming off a season where, you know, you're the reigning President's Trophy team. Your goaltender just turned down what he turned down, over 11 million, whatever the number was, some insane contract. You don't have him signed. I think they're going to have to look into extending Artemi Panarin in the offseason. Because I think he only got 1 year left on his deal. There's a lot of money to be spent there. Obviously, one of the best players in the world. I mean, our buddy Johnny Lazarus did this really decryptic selfie video out the streets in New York the other night of this. He was really depressed with the state of the Rangers, and I'm like, buddy, like it's like that meme with James Franco with the noose around his neck first time. Like, as a Sabres fan, that's how I feel. Like, your first time, bud. Yeah.
Right. But the expectations are high, right?
Yeah.
After going to the Eastern Conference Final last season, playing as well as they did against the Panthers, having as many good players as they have, and coming so close for so long. It's a team that expects to go to the Stanley Cup Final this season.
Yeah.
And if they're not performing to the best of their ability at the moment, and I think they're in the first wild card spot, and the Sabres are in the second. So to be in that conversation rather than at the top of the Metropolitan Division is not what anybody expected from them to begin this season. So, yeah, maybe there's no fire to the smoke, but it potentially could be also a savvy move by Drury and Laviolette and the management to shake things up a little bit. So,
I'm looking at Puckpedia right now. At the contract situation, they don't have full no move clauses. They have, I think it's the modified, because it's now the anchors, the full no move, the symbol they use next to it. I think they said, producer Steve said the anchor indicates a full no move, and then the shield indicates a modified, meaning I think he got to submit a list if a team reaches out, or if they want it. So they both have modified this season and next for Trouba. So Trouba has 1 year left on his deal. Wasn't there like some smoke about Trouba last season or the start of the season about just the unhappiness of his position with the team too? Like, there was something. I'm almost positive. Maybe somebody in the peanut gallery could remind me of that. There was definitely something going on with Jacob. Oh, it was with his wife, right? It was something with his wife.
I don't know that.
It was definitely the Rangers might have been looking to deal him, but that's what it was. I think it was he would refuse to waive his no move clause because his wife has residency in New York City and he's not going to move away from his wife. I think that's what it was. I'm like 99% positive that's what it was.
Sounds messy.
Yes. Again, somebody in the peanut gallery, if they can look that up for us, he'd appreciate it. I'll pull it up. But they both have modified no move clauses. I mean, what type of a convincing would that even take? Because you have to imagine Buffalo's on it.
I don't know. A nice house in Clarence. I can't tell you what it would take to convince someone to move from New York City to Buffalo. But I think his wife is in school to be a doctor. So there you go.
It's what it was.
I think that would make things difficult, to say the least. If we don't have to involve Trouba and we can just talk about Chris Kreider, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Right? I think of the two, 95% of Sabres fans would probably want Chris Kreider. So if it's too complicated to get Jacob Trouba to the Sabres, let's just talk Kreider. How about that?
Yeah, I'd be all. Again, it will depend on the price. I saw some stuff online about what it would take. I really don't think it should take you a ton to get Chris Kreider. He obviously has a big contract. He's 33 years old. It's not like he's on the right side of he's kind of like getting ready to head into that twilight part of his career. He's only got 9 points in the season. I don't think he should take if he's willing to waive. It should not take a massive offer to get him out of New York. It really shouldn't.
It shouldn't, but the Rangers just could be like, okay, we're going to keep him then, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take,
of course, yeah.
It's going to take something. So
I mean, if we're talking
I absolutely think it's an NHL player and either a top pick or a prospect.
Yeah.
So
which we can afford to do.
Of course. Whether that be Peyton Krebs, Jordan Greenway, Yoki Haru. Obviously, if it's a forward, they're going to want somebody to slot in, not necessarily to take his spot, but maybe move somebody up. But
would you trade Jack Quinn for Chris Kreider straight up?
Well, I think they wouldn't do that personally.
You don't think they wouldn't do that?
No, I don't think they would do that. I don't think they would do, especially with the way Quinn started the season. They wouldn't do that one for one.
Yeah, but they know his ceiling.
Yeah, but I personally don't think they would do that. Yes, I would do that, but I don't think they would. I think it's a player currently on our team and a prospect or a pick. So We'll see. I'm intrigued by the possibility.
But here's the thing.
I do think this is a lot more smoke than fire.
I agree. My biggest thing with the Quinn point is he's cost controlled. You know what I mean? You get rid of that contract and it frees you up to sign your franchise goaltender and to extend Artemi Panarin.
Yeah.
Cost control player.
That can't hurt, but this team also isn't tanking, right?
No.
They're not gonna they're not gonna make their team significantly first, both in the present and potentially the future, by trading away Chris Kreider, who by all accounts is one of the most important members on the team, even if he has had a down season. So I think it's going to take more than that personally, but who knows? I'm not a GM.
Yeah, I don't know. Did you see that picture today
of Lindy, Ryan Miller, and Dom?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How about that, man? That was dope.
Absolutely love it. I hope that's some
what kind of vibe did that bring back for you? Just seeing, and even Lindy admitted I was in Buffalo for as long as I was because of you two. Had you guys back to back.
It's amazing to see, and also I hope it's part of a longer sit down conversation / mini documentary that the Sabres production team has done in the past. Like you mentioned,
they're dropping something Thanksgiving Day at noon.
Well, there you go. That's the best news I think any Sabres fan could hope for. This is part of why you brought back Lindy Ruff, right? Of course, you wanted to make your current team a little bit better, but the nostalgia of it all is a big part of this. There are the glory years that we all think back to, even the vibe that we hope to be in the building tomorrow night for Thanksgiving Eve. It's a feeling that not a lot of people have had since 2007, right? Or maybe 2011, the 2010-2011 season when they last made the playoffs. But it's the nostalgia of it all. It's the legends that we all grew up with. And to see those three together and to listen to that conversation is obviously going to be really cool for a lot of people. So I think we all knew that it was going to happen with Lindy, but especially the way the season started and how they've responded since, it looks like that it was the correct move in more ways than one.
Yeah. And we talked about it on that other show I mentioned earlier, the Step Brothers Sabres pod, that, this the one thing, and it wasn't even just me saying it, everybody was saying it, if you're finally going to have accountability with Lindy Ruff, and how many times we've already seen it this season, with Yoki Haru, who I don't think expected to be a healthy scratch for that many games in a row. Samuelson, before he got hurt, was scratched for a few games. Holding players accountable in post-game pressers. Like, that's just something we haven't probably seen since the last time Lindy Ruff was in Buffalo. And it's you're seeing the effect of it in this team's play on the ice. Like, it's a no bullshit thing. He shortens the bench if he has to. Like, if you're not performing and it's a close game again, guess what? You're not playing. Like, he will roll 2.5 lines. He does not give a shit. He wants to win.
Yeah, and I think everybody is showing the effects of that. It's been really, especially on Friday. Like, even when the team was down 2-0, I said to my friends I was at the game with, I was like, I still feel good about potentially coming back here. They were getting their chances, and John Gibson was playing relatively well, but I felt a difference in the energy of the team and a difference in what we saw last season after they got to slow starts, when it felt like the game was just over, when the other team could shut down the neutral zone and clog the Sabres' offensive entry as much as possible so that they legitimately had no chance to win. As good of a development coach as Donnie was, I don't think he had the ability to change on the fly, to change his system during a game to the point where they need to play a certain way to get to the net and create chances when they're already down in a game, which is going to happen. It might happen tomorrow night with as good of a team as the Wild are. But if it does happen and they are off to a slow start after the high of a 3-game California West Coast trip, I'm still confident in this team to come back. And that's a good feeling to have moving forward, especially in these next 3 games. Like, these next 3 games, of course, we talked about November being a little bit easier. I think they need to win the next 3 to get the 10 of 14 that we talked about going into this month, which after the start of this month would be an incredible accomplishment. But Vancouver at home in a weird matinee game on Black Friday is not an easy game. And then I think we all know what type of game it can be when you go on the road against the New York Islanders. It could be a slogfest.
Yep.
It could be, if you get down early, they're going to shut the neutral zone down and it's going to be frustrating. But I'm confident in the way this team is constructed at the moment and the way that they've been playing, that they theoretically could come back from almost anything. So we'll see. But obviously tomorrow's a big one.
Got a question here from our boy Mauricio. What happened to Bissonnette yesterday?
We
are going to get into that.
This consumed most of my day.
Well, yeah, you work for TMZ, so I imagine you guys are pretty right on top of this. Cliff notes. I'll just give the cliff notes. I'm not sure you know, but like, did you watch the video he put out?
Well, I had to
his video, and then did you hear the clip from the show today?
Yeah, I had to cut a soundbite for our show from the initial 3.5-minute social media selfie video that he posted. About the situation, and then I did listen to what he said on Spit and Chicklets as well. So I think I'm as familiar as anybody on what's happened with this situation.
So we'll just give the cliff notes. I guess the restaurant's called Houston's, and it's a place that he goes to often. I think he said 3, sometimes 4 times a week. That's a really good atmosphere if you're bringing your family. Great food, great atmosphere. And
number one, who goes to the same restaurant 3-4 times a week?
Paul Bissonnette. The food must be that good, man. You know what? It's probably really. I'm assuming, obviously, he lives in Scottsdale. His house is probably really close. I imagine
I thought that was a little bit strange, but more power to you.
Yeah. Okay. But he might just be trying to put out positive press for the restaurant too. You don't know that. Like, I go there.
I
but
just
still,
for anybody to go to the same place 3 to 4 times a week, is a little weird.
Well, he might not even just be eating. He might go there for a beer. You know what I mean? They have a bar there. But regardless, he's there and he's watching a group of golfers get very, very inappropriate with the restaurant staff. Mind you, this is a family restaurant. He sits back for, I think he said, like 30 seconds, and then he decides to insert himself because their fingers are going in faces. It looks like it's escalating as time goes on, and it could get ugly. There was a guy in a lime green polo with his hands in the manager's face, and interjects himself, grabs the guy's arm and said, "Hey buddy, like, you need to stop harassing these people, or, this is about to get real. We can take this out in the parking lot." And he even said, like, the moment those words left his lips, guys started throwing swings, you know, at him left and right. What's crazy is this started in the restaurant, made its way into the parking lot, made its way into a CVS parking lot, and ended behind a CVS dumpster. Like, I'm just trying to imagine. I guess there's a video coming out, security footage that they're going to release. But, like, I'm just imagining how this is all. And it's 7-on-1. 7-on-1.
6-on-1, but yeah.
Well, 6-on-1, sorry. Like, but there were 7 there. He said there were 7. 6 of them were arrested. So, but still, the number 6-on-1, that is. And the fact that, I mean, he's a big guy. Like me and my buddy Mike Carr from the Buffalo Sabres Warriors Foundation, we went to the St. Louis Blues game, and he was there. And I've met him a few times. He signed a few hats for us for the foundation, for them to raffle off. He's just a great guy. And he's a big dude. He's thick too. So, like, to take that guy down, I mean, 6-on-1, just. And for him to be still standing, like, because Curls, you get jumped 6-on-1. What's your state of being right now?
I mean, I consider myself to be pretty scrappy.
Shut the fuck up.
Depends on the type of. I will say, when you look at least 4 of the dudes from their mugshots today, I think any of us could probably take 4 of those guys.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They look over the age of 40. They don't necessarily look like they can move that well.
But it's a numbers game, man. Like, if you're tied up with one guy, you got another guy throwing hit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's still.
Me compared to Paul Bissonnette is a different story, and I don't necessarily want to have that conversation. I'm a pacifist. But, yeah, they unfortunately picked the wrong guy. I had to look up the stats of how many NHL fights Paul Bissonnette has had in his career, and it's over 50. And that doesn't include the AHL and juniors, where he basically only had a professional hockey career because of the fact that he was an enforcer. He makes fun of this all the time. People call him Paul Miss the Net because he didn't necessarily have the most amount of skill. So he became a professional hockey player and had over 300 games in the NHL because he was an enforcer. The dude, he's not a boxer. He's not an MMA fighter. This has happened with MMA fighters and boxers before, and it's always the funniest situation. But below that, that is the last guy that you want to fight. He clearly knows what he's doing.
Jake Paul's not like Bez now.
how to defend himself. So
he's gonna try. Jake Paul's gonna try and jump on this money train.
I mean, I weirdly think that Biz has talked about that before, which is really funny. But yeah, it's a weird situation, and it couldn't have happened. One of the funnier things I heard today, I think it was Big Cat on his Sirius XM show. He was like, imagine being these guys, waking up this morning after getting arrested, going to jail, having to make bond, and then you realize, if you didn't know already, that this dude is one of the more recognizable faces in sports media, and he has not only a national NHL show that he's on weekly, but he has one of the most popular sports podcasts in the world with an army of fans behind him. Like, what a mistake. Like, obviously that's bad luck, but
do you think any of them realized in the moment who they were fighting?
I don't know if any of these guys are hockey fans, and
maybe it was a seventh guy. Maybe it was a seventh. It was supposed to be 7-on-1. The 7th guy is, you know what?
Yeah, I'm not going to do it.
You guys go ahead. I know who that is.
Of the people that I work with, I was the only one who knew his name coming into today. Of course, when the news came out, you look him up, and obviously he's got the pedigree, he's got the reputation, and he's got the following. Of course, given he's way more famous because of his post NHL career and his online presence than he ever was as a player. Obviously, I know you've met him a couple times. He does a lot of charity events around the country, but also even just the big deal selects and the street hockey tournaments that they have all over the country and all over Canada. The dude, regardless of not being the best NHL player, has made an unbelievable career out of just generally being a funny guy and knowing what he's talking about. Like,
when they came here for the Chicklets Cup, they donated, I think it was $10,000 or more to the Buffalo Fire Department, which I appreciate because my uncle, who's like a father to me in many ways, a second dad, He just retired this past year after putting over 30 years in with Buffalo Fire. And so I appreciate the hell out of that, man. And they put on great events here, like the 2 Chicklets Cups they did back to back. They were a blast, fantastic. I hope they bring it back again next year. I kind of asked him that. He's like, oh, no, we'll see. Buffalo's a fantastic location. The real deal when it comes to when you want to host an event like that, where you want to look. And I'm sure they're probably going to look into Buffalo again. But regardless, like you said, like the pedigree and those guys when they got out of jail and got their phones back, and then
really,
like, oh my
really
God,
tough scene for those
guys lost their jobs, right? Like their guys have lost their jobs over.
And he even said like he's going to do, given how angry he is about the situation, like he's going to do whatever he possibly can to ruin their lives as much as possible. Which at the end of the day, nobody was killed. Nobody was seriously injured. These guys eventually will recover from it, and obviously it'll turn into be a huge mistake, but it's not like they're going to be in jail for the rest of their lives. They'll probably lose their jobs or face some type of punishment. But I would say the main point is nobody could come out better looking in this situation than Paul Bissonnette. Obviously, I don't think he would
go making money off it. They're selling T-shirts.
Yeah, and he reluctantly, it seemed, wanted to do that because he doesn't want to make it about himself. But he wouldn't go on his social media. He wouldn't go on his podcast. Yeah. He wouldn't likely go on NHL on TNT tomorrow night and talk about it if the video is not going to support what he said. Yeah. And I think the restaurant obviously will back him up, given, God, he's their best customer. So yeah. I think it's an interesting situation because especially in my line of work, we hear about these types of things all the time. Obviously, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's a situation where there's a fight, it's obviously going to make headlines, especially when a celebrity is involved. And usually sometimes the video doesn't always support what is said or what is alleged by one party or the other.
And he's fired up, man. He's still fired up.
I mean, and how could you not be, right? Like people who take care of him apparently 5 times a week were being harassed, and he tried to defend their honor. And it turned into a situation where he got jumped and he was just defending himself. So good on him. And I've always liked Paul. I think obviously people, have their opinions here and there, but I found him to be really entertaining. It's turned into a bit of a joke that he sits on the same desk as Wayne Gretzky, given his NHL career, but it is pretty admirable, the career that he's made for himself in the media, despite obviously only being an enforcer and playing 300 NHL games. Yeah.
So, and you want to know what too is like, my quick biz story. When I first met him, I was running my charity hockey tournament at Riverworks, and there was some stuff. There was a players only party that we were doing at the Labatt Brew House the night before. There was a Sabres game. A lot of players that were going to be playing in the tournament were also going to the game that night. So we did like a happy hour deal at the brew house, 50-50 drawing, a raffle, Chinese auction, stuff like that. And I was going there to talk semantics over with Jason Sunshine, the bar manager. And I saw the Pink Whitney truck sitting there. I'm like, oh, that's weird. It must be some promotional thing. And I walk in the bar and I look to my left and I fucking see Paul Bissonnette just sitting at the bar having a beer. I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. That's the most polarizing face in hockey. Like, it just is. So I took a shot. I went in the bar it wasn't the main bar. It was one of the side bars off. Like you can like kind of book a private room there, and there's a bar in this particular one. So I'm in there. I sit down. I order a blue light, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, how's your beer?" And he approaches me, and I'm like, "Yeah, man, it's good, man. Just a long day, having a beer. Just want to let you know, though, huge fan, bro." And he's like, "Oh shit, no shit." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You playing in the Chicklets Cup?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am, dude. I'm actually here to talk about my own charity tournament." And he walks over and he gives me like 20 minutes of his time just shooting the shit with me. I asked him, I had a bunch of stuff, hats in my bag, Sabre stuff that I asked him to sign to auction off the tournament. He gladly did it. Took a few pictures. Guy's an absolute beauty. And just to your point, he gets some negative press, for some of the things they do talk about, or, whatever it is. But you want to know what, man, if you met the guy, I think that your opinion would change, because he is at heart. He's a good dude.
And I've heard that as well. And it kind of reminds me of Daniel Ricciardo. He came to our local LA Bills backers faction over here in Santa Monica a couple weeks ago. And he's a guy that wasn't necessarily known as the best F1 driver, but from the show Drive to Survive, I didn't watch it myself, but I have a few friends that are huge fans. They say he was the most likable, guy you could possibly imagine on the show, and that's the reason his profile got to where it is currently. I think he is the third or fourth most followed F1 driver on the planet in a sport that is really, really popular internationally, and he is now retired. And it was said it was because he's a nice guy, and he showed up to the bar for the Chiefs game the other day, and legitimately could not have been nicer. Took pictures with everybody, said hello to everybody. He is now living in LA, and he basically just asked his buddies where the best place to watch a Bills game was, and he was directed to our bar. And he says he's going to come more often now. Even did a shotgun with
cool. It's so cool, especially when it comes to the Bills. Sabres fans, maybe more so in the past than today, they travel well. And, when you talk about cities and teams that have fans like kind of spread out across North America, like the Buffalo teams tend to, you see them, they're more spread out, the ones that have traveled. But like the Bills especially, man, like to find out that there are certain like other pro athletes from other sports that are huge Bills fans, it's so cool. I had no clue idea about that with him.
And
that one professional boxer, you remember that video from the Houston game, that one pro boxer that's a big Bills fan that almost got into it with that Houston fan in the stands. You see that video?
I didn't see that personally. Do you know his name?
So I forget his name. I'll find it. I'll send it to you. But like, he was wearing a Diggs jersey, a Houston Diggs jersey, ironically, and he was getting in this guy's face, and the guy's just smiling at him. And he does one of these. He kind of like, he tries to make him flinch, and the guy's just a wall, just no reaction, and he's just laughing in his face. And his buddy's like got his hands like, "Yo, let's go." And like the videos that were posted about it after the fact, it's like this guy in the Diggs jersey, the Houston Diggs, has no clue that like he just got out of something that could have been detrimental to his health, like could have been terrible for him, could have ended badly for him, because he's like an undefeated pro. I think he's a Mexican undefeated pro boxer, and he just would have destroyed him. But still, like athletes, pro athletes, brother, it's cool, man, to see that how much love there is for Buffalo outside of this market.
Yeah, and especially Ricardo. He's best friends with Josh Allen, and currently at this moment, Buffalo or otherwise, that's not a bad person to be best friends with.
No.
Pretty cool. And yeah, it just reminded me about, as you said, what I have heard about Paul Bissonnette is as much shit as he does get. So good on him. And I can't wait to see the video. Hopefully TMZ gets the exclusive.
Yeah. So will you be the one that clips that?
We'll see. No, well, that's the thing. Like, I think there's a chance that either the police or the restaurant releases surveillance. So police have body cams in any situation where they're called. So we oftentimes get that, or they release it to the public. And then the restaurant probably has surveillance cameras that they theoretically could release themselves to help prove Biz's story, given how close he is to the restaurant. So in this situation, I imagine that's what's going to happen. But I also mentioned today, like, given who he is and how often he goes there, and given that it seems like there was some lead up to that situation, the best possible scenario for us would be, somebody in the restaurant that just happened to take a video.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Before they even announced that there's security, somebody had to have their phone out, right?
Yeah, who knows? Like, haven't heard of it yet, but sometimes after a story takes a couple days to get some legs, there is a chance that it does happen. So we'll see.
You know what video I do want to see? I want to see the CVS video, because that was essentially the end of this whole ordeal, is when he made his way into the CVS and they didn't follow him in. Biz said that he had no shirt on, no shoes. He was wearing just pants and socks. I just want to see people's reactions in the CVS when this shirtless, like, meaty guy just beaten and bruised just after going through hell and back, stumbles into the CVS.
Meaty.
He's a meaty dude. He is. The fact that guy just went to war and walked out of it on his own 2
feet. It is really funny though, because like,
signed him to a contract.
He showed his bruises in the first video that he posted, and of course, like he said, he got boot fucked a couple times, but it didn't look as bad as I would have expected to, given that it was 1-on-6. And then you see the mugshots of the guys, and a few of them looked like they could get AARP benefits. So I'm not too surprised, to be honest. But
Real Deal Prime, this is not the Biz show. We're ending the show. We'll talk about Biz. You got here a little late. We talked about everything else at the
for 45 minutes. We talked about the Sabres.
Yes, we've talked about this for like 10 minutes now. Actually, another question here from James Payne, Sneaky Joe, talked about Kreider. We talked about that at the top of the show. Make sure you go check it out. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram. You can see my handle. It's covered up by that right now, but you can see my handle over there at Duane S39, at Hurls13, at 2goalies1Mike, just the way it's spelled there on our logo. Again, please, it helps us a lot. Subscribe on YouTube. Give us a follow there. Leave a comment. Like this video. It helps us get exposed. And I mentioned the group chat earlier. 500 subscribers on YouTube. That's big. Like YouTube or anybody who does a podcast, such a hard platform to really monetize. So I think we're at almost 520 or something like that now since yesterday. On yesterday's video, the last post game that we did. I know you weren't on it, but it really popped off. For sure. And I think that led to that. But thank you for everybody who's been with us since day one. Please, if you haven't, make sure you give us a follow on any of those platforms. Give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I don't know, Blue Sky now. We're all there. Yeah,
Blue Sky's great, especially in the Bills and Sabres community. Obviously, X, formerly known as Twitter, is getting a little bit hectic, I would say.
Yeah.
I still use it, obviously, and we're still going to use it. But Blue Sky, for people that were on Twitter in the early days, maybe 2012 to 2016, it's not just an echo chamber for people that think are like-minded politically. I think it's just void of the bots. It's void of the Elon bros. It's void of the advertisements. It's just a place where I think people can talk about the things that they're interested in without having to deal with the trolls. And if there are trolls, you can just easily block them and not have to deal with them. So I have the same handle on Blue Sky, and I've only had it for 2 weeks, and I think I already have over 100 followers on there, and I'm pretty happy with the discussion and the platform that currently exists.
I have so many different options for social media now. Obviously since we came to Built in Buffalo, I'm trying to be more active on there to help build that brand. And then, you have Twitter and Instagram. I mean,
it's a lot, but I will say
it's a lot. I am on Blue Sky too. I think my handle's the same too, at Duane S39, or you just search my name. I think I last time I checked, I had over 100 followers. But again, slowly but surely, we're going to build those platforms. But you can always follow us on Twitter, which is where you get most of our content from. And again, remember, this is brought to you by. Make sure you follow Fatty Beer on Instagram or Twitter. I don't think they're on Blue Sky yet, but they're on Facebook. One of the premier spots to get all of your adult beverages when it comes to happy hour, Sabres games, Bills games. They have over 300 beers to choose from. Make sure you go check out Fatty Beer. They have their 24 beers of Christmas advent calendar out right now, limited supply only. Make sure you get your hands on that. You can order them online. I did it last year. Some great beers in there. Make sure you check it out. And, of course, Buffalo Go apparel for all of your shirts, your hats, and your hoodie needs. Hurls, any final thoughts before we get out of here? We're a little over an hour now. So,
just related to that, I have never, unfortunately, been to a Fatty Beer location, but I will. The only Sabres game while I'm home during the holidays will be, I think, December 27th, Friday against the Blackhawks. And I was just thinking that it'd be great to go to the Fatty Beer location downtown before that game. Maybe we could do a pregame show.
We have done pregames there before, so
maybe a live pregame show of sorts could be fun. So
what date are you in?
I get home late on the 20th, but I'm home until New Year's Day. But the only Sabres game is on December 27th. So
we'll do that, and if you have the time, we'll try and get to the Lancaster location, because that's one of the best spots to go to.
Yeah, for to watch an away game or a post game, that would be cool too.
Friend of the program, Greg Day, is the manager there. He always takes care of us. Just a great atmosphere there. There was
I've been known, as people saw in Anaheim, to have a beer. To have a beer or three. So I'm definitely trying to cut down a little bit before the holidays, because this past week and also the Bills season has not helped out a lot with that area. But I'm looking forward to it, just because I haven't been home since the Chiefs playoff game, and always good to get home for the holidays, and specifically around Thanksgiving. I always looked forward to that Thanksgiving Eve game. and specifically with a team going into tomorrow. I think we all know how big of a game tomorrow night is, and then moving forward into the matinee game at home against the Canucks on Friday, 3 p.m., and then Islanders Saturday night. So
yeah,
big 3 games here. Obviously, you want to win 4 in a row, but I would say in another 3-game stretch to end November, getting 4 of 6 points would be we and absolutely massive for the team moving forward. So looking forward to it. And that's all I got.
Well, this last comment out, who starts tomorrow? We got goalies. Think Reimer is for real.
If I had $1 million, shout out the Bare Naked Ladies.
It's UPL. I had $1 million.
If I had $1 million, which I absolutely do not, but maybe one day if you guys subscribe a little bit more, it's Ukko Pekka Luukkonen without a shred of a doubt. And the cool part,
Flower tomorrow.
I don't think we will. I think we'll get Gustafsson.
You think it'll be Gustafsson?
But I think likely Reimer starts Saturday in New York, unless they start him Friday at home against the Canucks to give him his first home game. I think Reimer gets one of those 2 back-to-back games on Friday and Saturday. So
it's the Canucks and the Rangers, or is it the
Canucks and Islanders?
Sorry, Islanders. Yeah, I would start him against the Islanders personally. I think that's the game you start him against.
Definitely a lower level offensive output, and a little bit less of a threat. But yeah, that's the benefit of having a career backup for the most part. He was a starter at one point, but yeah, I think he gets one of those 2 games and you go from there. But Ukko Pekka Luukkonen, 6K, UPL, Upi, Luke will be starting tomorrow night.
We got to start thinking up some, you already had the one idea for a McLeod shirt.
I think we got to do 6K.
Brainstorming some ideas.
We got to do 6K. 6K is my favorite name that is underused for UPL. So I think we got to do something with that as well.
For sure. So that being said, guys, this has been episode 171 of 2 Goalies, 1 Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room, and of course, Buffalo Logo Apparel. I am Duane for Connor Hurley. Sabres, Wild, tomorrow night, looking for 4 in a row. We'll see if it happens for the first time in like a decade. That's an exexaggeration, but
84 years.
Huh?
It's been 84 years. The Titanic movie.
Old, decrepit. You want to talk about like movie villains? I always thought Rose was a movie villain.
I'm not going down this tangent. I gotta go.
Yeah. I gotta stop while I'm ahead. With that being said, guys, we'll talk to you later. And as always, go Sabres.